Hello MennoNerds, this is Michael and I want to talk about the collapse of Western civilization. So Steve brought up this topic about whether the future will be better or worse, and he eventually came to the conclusion that in neither. We will basically be the same sinful but beautifully created human beings till the end. And even though there are many degrees of improvement, particularly during the last 200 or 300 years since the Industrial Revolution, we also have these huge upcoming clouds of nuclear disaster as well as climate change, which most likely will ruin most progress that has been made during these last couple of centuries. And in fact, it is only really since the so-called Enlightenment that people have been talking about civilizational progress and how everything develops in a more positive light. And that was combined with a critique of the biblical worldview, because in Revelation it's pretty clear, even if you don't take every word literally, which you shouldn't, that the future will include a lot of suffering and a lot of pain. And of course some people say that, well, Revelation is just really a commentary on the contemporary time of John when he wrote that down. But I think it is inevitable that Revelation also has a message about the future. It surely talks a lot about heaven and how it will be like when Jesus comes back. And so far, that hasn't happened. So I think there is foundation, I think there's support for the biblical worldview that there will be disasters as we move on. And one thing that will be very fundamental, I think, is the collapse of the Western and indeed the global modern civilization that so many of us are dependent on. This video wouldn't reach you if we didn't have this extremely complex network of technology, of money, and of development. This is very new, it is extremely fragile, and it will ultimately collapse. I realized this last Christmas, actually, when I was reading a book in Swedish called Collapse. I don't think it's translated to English, unfortunately, but basically the message of the book was that, yeah, a collapse of modern civilization is inevitable, and it's pretty clear. You can ask basically any economist on why economic growth is necessary, and they will all tell you that if we don't have growth according to the capitalist system that our economy functions in, everything will collapse. That is the outcome of not having constant growth. But then eternal growth is literally impossible. So it will stop and then a collapse will come. You can also see this again due to environmental factors, but even now as cheap fossil fuel energy becomes more and more expensive, it's not that cheap anymore, and even as you have more people on the earth, more mouths to feed, less resources, overfishing, and all of these problems, it will be a collapse possibly greater than anything we've seen, like the collapse of the Roman Empire or the Maya dynasty, but even bigger. And as Christians, we should not panic because of this. We do have hope in Jesus. We do have an eternal safety with Him. And even here and now, our prayer should be that God's will be done on earth as it is in heaven, and that we represent that eternal heavenly sinless kingdom now. And so I think as the times move on, and I'm pretty sure it will get tougher and tougher, we should stand strong, because we have an almighty power on our side. Thank you for watching. God bless you guys. See you.